Imagine a castle, 2, 3, 4, even 5 times as big as the biggest castle you have ever seen. And at 2 corners of this great castle there were 2 great towers. And at the top of those 2 great towers there were 2 great rooms. One of the towers was perfectly stairless. But if you climbed to the top of the other tower and opened the door, you would see sitting in her castle window the Queen of the Tylwyth Teg. Body perfectly still yet strangely animated. Eyes searching the distant hills. Hands gripped tightly to her chair, praying to feel the thunderous vibrations of her giant husband returning home. But these external manners of lament were merely shadows of an unseen grief that swelled with silence in her tortured soul. Time passed. Days, weeks, months, years. Now the Queen of the Fairies and the Lost Giant had 2 children, a little girl by the name of Melun and a little boy by the name of Rhys Goch. And together in this misery the 2 children grew, with only one another to guide them, hand in hand, like a beacon of hope. Such love between a brother and a sister had never before been known. Above the castle of Llywynarach there is a hillside full of magic. A hillside that stretches on and on and on as far as the eye can see. A blanket of nothingness, known locally as the Green Desert. Known also locally as the very place where the human world touches that of the fairies. To escape their mother's misery, the 2 children would climb the steep stone path that led up onto the hillside each day. And they would fill that blanket of nothingness with laughter and joy and song. They would play out the stories of their ancestors, of the giant and fairy kingdoms. And they'd stay on that hill until the sun dipped behind the horizon, when they would make their way back down to the castle. They'd try to bring with them some of the joy and happiness that they had found up on the hillside. They would tell their mother stories of the songs that they'd sung, of the games that they'd played, of the adventures that they'd had. But her eyes couldn't see them. Her heart couldn't feel them. Her hands gripped tighter to her threadbare chair. As the children grew, their bodies began to change in strange and unexpected ways. Rhys Goch became taller and taller, broader and stronger, until he had unmistakably turned into a giant.
Look at me, Melun, I am so huge.
His hands, like great mechanical shovels, would dig through the soil and the earth. He'd build great mounds. He'd pick his sister up and he'd place her on top of the mound so that she too could play at being a giant. Melun's body too began to change. She began to feel magic coursing through her veins. As time went by, her magic grew. She learned to speak to the wind. She could command the snow to fall in the middle of summer, and if she asked the wind politely enough, it would blow her great giant brother off his great giant feet. One day, when they were playing out on the hill, Melun disappeared. Rhys Goch began to panic. He pounded across the hillside, his great giant feet hammering the ground like an earthquake. Melun! Melun! I'm up here, Rhys. He lifted his head to the sky, and high, high above the clouds, he saw his sister. She had transformed into a skylark, dancing. And in the way that skylarks do, she dropped out of the sky, and in the way that only Melun could do, she transformed back into her fairy self and landed delicately on her 2 fairy feet. On a nearby hill, another giant was watching them. A giant by the name of Rhys D. Big, gentle, timid Rhys D. He too had watched the children grow. He'd watched Melun turn into a beautiful young woman, her laughter radiating across the hills, her hair shining like the sun, and he fell into a deep, deep longing. He would sit on that hill and watch them until they descended back down to their castle home, when he would return home to his castle. He would toss and turn in his giant bed, dreaming only of her. He would awake, pouring with sweat, pull on his great giant boots, and go bounding out across the hill to wait for her once more. And there, as he waited, he would sing the song of his love to the only ears that could hear him, the ancient Welsh hills. Fi'n hangen lan, fi'n holad glid, tydi'r landaf yn y byd, tyda sy'n peri, poen a chri, a ddi sy'n dwyn, fe mwadi. Pan fidian rodio gyda dydd, fi'n halon fach sy'n mynd yn bryd. Oedd gwylad sôn i'r ademan, daw hiraeth mawr a Melun lan. One night Melun couldn't sleep. The moon was bright and full, and it poured in through her window and onto her pillow. She climbed out of bed and went to her window. She threw it open to let in the cool night air, and she heard it, dancing in the breeze, the most beautiful song that she had ever heard. Fi'n halon fach sy'n mynd yn bryd. Roedd glywed sôn i'r ademan, daw heraeth mawr a Melun lan. Pan ffradian rodio gyda hwyr, fi'n halon fach adodd fel coer. Roedd glywed sôn i'r ademan, daw hiraeth mawr a Melun lan. She felt her heart swell. It lifted her feet. It carried her out of her bedroom, through her door, down the passage, down the stairs, and out into the cool night air. Once there, she began to run, as fast as she could towards the sound of the music, further and further up the hill until she rounded the top of the hill, and it stopped. She found a patch of moss and heather and sat down and decided to watch the glory of the rising morning sun. And as she sat there, drinking in its beauty, she felt a hand settling on her shoulder. She jumped up. It was a man, a plain, mortal shepherd. "Hello," he said. "I'm Edu. Who are you?" "Hello, Edu. I'm Melun." "Melun," he said. "Melun. What a beautiful name." She went back the next and the next and the next, and she fell into a deep, deep love for Edu, and he for her. On that nearby hill, Rhys D was also watching, his chest heaving with sadness, great tears pouring from his giant eyes, down his giant face and over the rocks like a waterfall. One night, Rhys Goch couldn't sleep. His head was full of dreams. He dreamt that his sister had left him, that he went to his mother's room, and where she sat there lay a pile of bones and dust. He woke up with a fright. He went to his sister's room, and she was gone. Rhys Goch began to panic. He ran to his mother's room, where she sat, a shadow of her former self.
Mother, have you seen Melun? She's not in her room.
But her eyes couldn't see him. Her heart couldn't feel him. Her hands gripped tighter to her threadbare chair. He pulled on his great giant boots and went striding up the hill, and as he rounded the top of the hill, he saw her, his sister. She was singing and laughing and dancing with a man. Her cheeks grew red, like the fire in his stomach. He went back down to the castle and waited for her. And as he saw her rounding the hill, her heart full of joy, he felt an anger, a fury bubbling in his stomach. He went pounding up to her. He picked her up with his great giant hand and threatened to crush her. And then out of the corner of his eye, he saw the great castle's stairless tower. And with 3 great strides, he pushed her in through the castle window. She tried to use her magic to fly down from her prison. But as she had fallen deeper and deeper in love with a mortal, the magic she had inherited from the fairy world had left her. From there in her castle tower, she watched each day as Edu searched the hill for her. She screamed out to him, but her screams wouldn't reach. On that nearby hill, Rhys D also watched Edu searching the hill. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, but she never came. Enough was enough. He summoned all of his strength and decided to go down to the castle to look for her. And as he rounded the hill towards the castle, he heard her hoarse screams streaming out across the hills. He saw Rhys Goch patrolling the castle walls. He went to him.
Why do you keep her this way?
Why do you care, Rhys D? What is she to you?
I...
Yes? You love her. Help me to kill this shepherd that she pines for, and she is yours. From her place up in the castle tower, Melun watched Edu as he searched the hill as he did every day for her. She watched as the 2 giants mounted the hill. She watched as Edu ran from them. She watched as the 2 giants pounded his small body into the earth. And as she watched, she let out a scream that would stop your breath, and in that instant, their mother woke up. Where had she been? She flew up to her daughter's prison. Giant stamping, daughter broken. And in that instant, she too began to scream. And as she did so, the power of the earth itself entered her body and poured out of her mouth. The ground beneath the giants opened up and filled with water, and they were drowned. And so that Melun and Edu could be joined forever, she turned them into water spirits. Still the streams of Melor and Edu meet at Hendra Bridge. And to commemorate the lost giants, she commanded 3 mounds to rise around that lake. One for Rhys Goch, one for Rhys D, and one for her own long-lost husband.